and certainly administration, and also our delegations this evening. And most importantly, to those who are streaming from the comforts of your home, welcome to our public council meeting this evening. With that, we'll call. All members of council are certainly present, and so I would ask also that to let folks know that we had an electronic personnel committee meeting that was earlier this evening at 6:30, which was a close to the public under section 239(2)(b) of the Municipal Act 2001, which permits a meeting or part of a meeting to convene in closed session when the subject matter to be considered is a personnel matter about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. So at this meeting, direction was given to administration regarding a personnel matter. So we'll dispense with the moment of silence and certainly national anthem. And so we'll go right into the meeting. And to the members, any disclosure of pecuniary interest on the agenda as presented to you this evening. Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I would like to declare conflict with regards to bylaw 2020-83 associated with the membership of the Tecumseh Youth Advisory Committee, where my two children are being considered for that membership. So I'll remove myself from the voting on that bylaw. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Altenhoff. Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Same rationale as Councillor Altenhoff, but mine will be for bylaw 2020-81 and bylaw 2020-84 due to the previously expressed conflicts with friends and family members having been appointed by council to various positions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dowie. All right, so with that, we'll move on to minutes. We have the regular minutes of the council meeting, November 24th, 2020, and the special council meeting minutes of also November 24th, 2020, for the committee and awards. So if I could have a motion that those minutes as presented to you this evening be adopted. Councillor Tonio moves and supported by Councillor Altenhoff. Any errors or omission on those minutes as presented? None identified, so that will be then will pass. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you very much. We do have a supplementary agenda adoption requirements. So if the items are added to the regular meeting agenda regarding 2021 draft budget reports and business plan PowerPoint presentation in the report of the Public Works, Environmental Services 2020-33 Public Works and Environmental Services Capital Works Plan be received. So Deputy Mayor Bichetti moves and supported by Councillor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. And then we'll move on to delegations, members of council, and I'm very pleased to introduce Christopher Hales, our chair of the Tecumseh Police Services Board, and our inspector, Glenn Miller, the Essex County OPP. They're here read the 2021 Police Police Services Board budget.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sean, if we could have the first slide. Well, Your Worship and members of council, thank you for receiving our presentation of the 2021 proposed police services and police service board budgets as reviewed by your police service board for presentation tonight. Glenn Miller and I note that the council has a large agenda this evening, so we'll make our presentation as short and as to the point as practical. Next slide, please. So the next slide gives an overview of policing in Ontario. We would note specifically that actions are going on right now with regard to the old Police Services Act, which is being replaced by the Community Safety and Policing Act 2019. It has received royal assent And we are waiting for the regulations to be developed completely so that we can adopt it for our policing in Tecumseh. The main part of that act that affects, some of it that affects us, is that the act will require the creation of a detachment-based board. So that means that the towns of Tecumseh, Lakeshore, Essex, Kingsville, Pelee Island will come together to form one large police service board. We also note that the community safety and well-being plan is now back on the rails. The province has allowed an extension to it, but it is being worked on. And that we also note that our Tecumseh Police Services have been mandated with a lot of extra work with regard to what is going on with the Emergency Measures Act and the Reopening of Ontario Acts. And so there is there's a lot going on there for them. We'll have our next slide. So at the present time, the Tecumseh Police Service Board is still operating under Section 10 of the old Act. And our board is responsible for the governance of our policing service to provide adequate and effective police services in the town. Currently, our members are the Mayor, Gary McNamara. Council appointment is the Deputy Mayor, Joe Becchetti. Municipal appointment, or the city appointment, is myself, Chris Hales. I'm the chair. And there are two Ontario government appointees, and that's Paul Sweet, who is acting as vice chair, and Mark Gomes also. So that's, we can go to the next slide. So if we look at this slide, we note that we are on the last year of a 6-year contract that was negotiated, and that there is in our budget an OPP wage adjustment that was under the collective bargaining unit of the Ontario Provincial Police Officers Association, and it covers their salaries from 2019 to 2022. So there's automatic upgrades to the cost of policing because of that. We note that there is no change in the level of policing services to Tecumseh under this new contract, but again, we also note that there is a significant amount of restriction of what we're doing at the board level because of COVID-19. We will not be traveling to zone meetings. We will not be traveling to any of our professional development meetings, our annual general meeting of the Ontario Association of Police Service Board, nor our spring conference. That will all probably be done online. We can have our next slide, please. So we are looking at now the contract services. So as we said, the Ontario Provincial Police contract is for a 6-year term. It is up, and the contract renewal is still going to be under the old Police Services Act. Our cost allocations, which aligns with the billing model that the OPP uses, is a base service calculated across the province of Ontario and divided out by household. And that's about 53% of the cost of Tecumseh for policing. And then the individual calls for services. And that right now is about 47% of the cost of policing in Tecumseh. And again, we're looking at the Ontario Provincial Police Collective Bargaining Unit has a negotiated 2% average pay increase between 2020 and 2022. We also note that any reconciliation between the actual cost of policing and this budget will be taken up in the 2023 budget. The 2021 budget contains a 2019 reconciliation. Sean, the next slide, please. So as an overview of where we still stand in the cost of policing to the residents of Tecumseh, Tecumseh is about $418 per household as at 2019. And that's the most current up-to-date information, obviously, that we can garner. You can look at the other costs for our neighbors from Essex and Chatham-Kent counties, as well as the municipalities of Windsor and Amherstburg and LaSalle. So we stand at about $418 per household, and that represents about 9.4% of the total expenses under the tax burden. So the next slide, please. If we look at that in comparison to the crime index, severity index for our neighboring communities, we are at about 43.5. That puts us right in the middle of the municipalities. I would still note that this cluster of municipalities within all of Canada is a very safe cluster of municipalities in relative terms. Okay, and to go into the statistical analysis of crime severity indexes, I cannot do it. I would point out, in my opinion, that our position, based on the 2019 figures, reflects a busy summer in 2019 when we experienced a rash of break-and enters during the day, as well as car break-ins from a group from out of town that was going through Tecumseh trying to get drug money. The Ontario Provincial Police apprehended those people on more than one occasion. They were remanded, let go, and they were back at it. So I think that reflects in this crime index. It's maybe moved us down a notch or two with regard to our neighboring communities. Our next slide, please. So this is our 2021 contemplated police services and related activities. As council well knows, the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan is still underway. Our Community Safety and Policing Act 2019, we are still looking at the development of the regulations. And I would tell you that the Ontario Association of Police Service Boards has prepared several white papers to affect change in the new regulations, as well as AMO. And I believe Mayor McNamara has reported several times on that too, Council. Our police service board in Tecumseh has spearheaded the drive to look at a detachment-based police service boards. We have sponsored the largest meeting of all the other boards to come to some consensus as to how we want to formulate a new Essex County-wide board. We know that as of there is a new police contract that will be issued out at the end of 2020. Will be with the bringing out of the new Community Safety and Policing Act. There will have to be a rewriting of all policing contracts across Ontario because the new act needs to support those contracts. And we note that also there's ongoing COVID enforcement of rules and regulations. As I stated before, our detachment is very busy with their workload in supporting Emergency Measures Act, the Reopening of Ontario Act, and several other provincial mandates. This is added, last time we talked, I believe it was about 1,200 calls a month to the Essex County Detachment's workload. So that is reflected too in the act. Next slide, please, John. Okay. Now we're down to the nitty gritty. So the Police Services Board is setting a 2021 budget of $34,856, and that is about an 18.5% decrease. Basically, the bulk of that sits within professional development. As we have stated before, with COVID-19, I believe none of the departments in the town of Tecumseh are contemplating any kind of travel to meetings or to conventions or anything. For us, our professional development workshops, our Zone 6 workshops, Southwestern Ontario, and then our annual general meeting of our association. And that's the Association of Police Service, the Ontario Association of Police Service Boards. So that's quite a savings with regard to the Police Service Board's budget. The next slide, please, Sean. Our police service has revenues back into the town, and we're setting that at about $172,927 for this budget, and that's a decrease of $4,000. And that's basically because of a review of the activity levels of going on within our detachment. If we look at, there's an increase of $4,000, which reflects the actual monies gained through the alarm registration program, but there is an offsetting $8,000 loss in Ontario provincial police reports and clearances. And that reflects basically the current activity levels within Tecumseh. So we go to the next board. So there's the big number. So the proposed 2021 Ontario Provincial Police budget for the town of Tecumseh is $3,589,801. And that is an increase of less than 1%, 0.96%. So if we look at that, I would note that there are some changes, and I would just say that there is a minor dollar difference between our presentation and the detailed budget that you have before you, and that's due to the placement of the janitorial services and fees which are associated with the Tecumseh detachment offices. But that's a small amount of money, and so it makes a minor variance. So what we're looking at this budget covering is that plus the reconciliation of extra fees in the 2019 budget, which Mayor McNamara has spoken to on several occasions. There's allowance for our policing of any special events, which will go ahead 2021, and it contains the wage adjustment for the detachment officers that will be covered in the calendar year 2021. We'll go to our next slide. There you go. Questions and answers. Now, if you look beyond this on your package, you will see that there are 4 bar charts that were prepared by staff, and they indicate where our detachment is spending their time for calls for service between 2015 and 2019. And it's broken down, and I encourage you to look at it, or if you have already looked at it, good. We are certainly willing to answer any questions on that, but I suspect that your real interest lies in the budget. So if we go back to the budget, the questions and answer slide, Inspector Miller and I would certainly try to answer any questions you have now with regard to the cost of this policing in the town of Tecumseh for the next year. That was pretty quick, I know.
All right, thank you very much, Chair Hales. And with that, so I'll open it up, obviously, for questions. Councillor Altenhoff and Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. And both gentlemen, Mr. Hales and Inspector Miller, thank you very much for being with us tonight and for the presentation and for the details as well. I appreciate the numbers you brought forth and you know, the analysis that's been undertaken, as well as those bar charts. I appreciate that. One thing that I'd also like to ask is, what do you foresee as we're moving forward into 2021? Again, with the budget that's presented, what changes do you envision, if any, in regards to you know, traffic control? You know, I'll call them the classical concerns that our residents are typically always bringing to us, and then we ultimately quite often are bringing to your attention. I think certainly. You know, I would very much, I think we'd all very much really appreciate hearing if there's going to be any changes on that front with regards to vehicular speeding, vehicular safety, you know, those points, please.
I think it's a two-part answer. I'll start with what our Police Service Board has requested of our detachment. We have in the recent history, probably generated by the Citizen Satisfaction Survey, addressed with our detachment commander and our staff sergeant the concerns of the citizens. We will be in the December-January meeting as we go forward. We are going to be focusing on talking about traffic control matters. There have been a lot of things brought up with suggestions. The Ontario Provincial Police has a wealth of background data as to the effectiveness of different types of policing with regard to traffic, speed, noise, etc. And so we have asked our detachment commander to bring that to the board to see if we can formulate a comprehensive policy. I can tell you that under Staff Sergeant Smith, there has been a focus on noise and speeding in the town of Tecumseh. And this is a shared concern of all the police boards in Essex County. Citizens in general around the county are tired of speeders. It's become a nagging problem. There are other things going on in the county that take the resources of our OPP, so that you can't have just, you know, speeding police. We have many other things which we need to be done to maintain a safe community. But I can tell you that they're in our planning for the near future. We are going to be addressing traffic, etc., in a meaningful way. And hopefully we can come back to council with some information and a plan for you. And Glenn, I don't want to steal your thunder. Please, if you can chip in on that.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And good evening, everyone, members of council, and those that are listening to this live stream. Just before I answer your question, sir, I just want to make just kind of a personal comment, if I could, just to use this opportunity. It's been a very difficult past couple of weeks for the OPP. We've had one of our members murdered. We've also had several others that have been violently injured and doing their duties. So certainly our thoughts and prayers are with those families. And I want to thank the residents of the town of Tecumseh and all of you that have taken the time to reach out to me personally and to the members to express their support for the job that they do. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you. And actually, Chris Hales is bang on in his assessment. We understand certainly not only in the town of Tecumseh, but elsewhere, that traffic continues to be an issue. I think traffic volumes are starting to increase. I'm not really sure why, but we have a lot of movement, a lot of transient movement throughout your particular area at all times. And what we've gone and done, I've actually, we have brought in resources from other areas of West Region that are specialists in traffic enforcement. You've seen those results or probably read about them in the paper when we'll bring in those special teams in addition to leveraging the resources that we have. Our intention, as it has been in the past and will continue in the future, when we do receive complaints, we act on them immediately. We provide feedback to the individual that has provided us with that information, and we'll certainly deploy all the various assets that we have to continue to moderate the speed and just basically gain compliance to the traffic laws. The speed lines are not a suggestion as to what speed to drive at. That is the law. And I know you all agree with that. So we're going to continue our enforcement in relation to that. And we try our best. We can't be everywhere just because of the pure volume of calls that we currently are handling. But our focus now for all the officers is certainly on those particular areas. I can tell you, we certainly noticed, certainly with stop signs and things like that, people aren't coming to a complete stop. That's one of the causal factors of personal injury, collisions, and property damage as well. So I know that people aren't too happy when they receive a summons for doing that, but however, the officers will continue to be very aggressive in their approach to the traffic management program that we have in place.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, any, yes, Councilor Tonio. Oh, sorry, Councilor Dowie and Councilor Tonio.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Chair Hales and Inspector Miller, for being here with the presentation. I guess just kind of building on that, I know that traffic doesn't have much to do with crime severity. You had some statistics about the crime rate, and we're positioned, I guess, in the out of 8, we're 5th. And I guess I think I'm going to go on a limb and say that's because we're adjacent to a larger center with easier access to our municipality versus others. But I'm not sure about that. I'm wondering if there is a correlation between the level of investment that our municipality puts into policing and the crime severity index being reported.
I think because this is operational, Inspector Miller needs to speak to it. I believe before he does, I would say that your observation about the fact that we are in a fairly affluent community that is adjacent to a city that has there are drug problems in there. We are susceptible to transient people coming through looking for money to support a drug habit. So, and I believe that was reflected in the 2019 summer activity with regard to B&Es during the day, because we have a lot of two families where both adults are working, and also with the fact that there were a lot of break-ins into cars and driveways because people feel fairly comfortable in Tecumseh and they don't lock their cars. So I'll let Inspector Miller talk about maybe where we see some of the crime coming from and how it's dealt with.
Yes, certainly. Due to the transient nature of individuals, the majority of the people that we're arresting are not necessarily the residents of the town of Tecumseh. They're coming through that particular area, and they're taking advantage of the vulnerabilities that people will leave open for them, which is very unfortunate. We know who a lot of these individuals are because on our borders, on our jurisdictional borders, we're dealing with a lot of the same people as are the other jurisdictions as well. We're able to identify them and arrest them. Within hours, they're back out on the street, and they're back committing the same type of crime, unfortunately. So our big focus now is really on crime prevention. We do our best to get these people before the courts. The people that we would arrest in Tecumseh are the same people that the city of Windsor would arrest, and some of our other jurisdictions as well. So we are getting a lot of people coming down the 401 for visiting through your area or to your area. In most instances, these are good people. In some instances, they're not. That's where we look certainly at an intelligence-led approach to try to determine what they're doing, where they're going, and get our resources in place in order to deter or apprehend them.
Councilor Tonio?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thanks, Chris, for your presentation. Inspector, you mentioned the traffic and you brought in some outside units, which is awesome. Thank you very much. I noticed we also had some joint operations with LaSalle and Windsor. Just wondering, maybe we can work together with Staff Sergeant Smith and Phil Bartnick, who has data on a lot of our streets in town. So my question is it possible that some of these traffic enforcement blitzes that you've done on Highway 3 and 42 and major highways, bring them into our town and address some of our local street issues with these blitzes? I think that might be advantageous. I know I can list 3 or 4 streets in my ward that are frequently traveled on and do have speeders or stop sign, as you mentioned, Inspector. So maybe I'm just thinking we can get these traffic blitzes into our town instead of out on the major highways, which is important on the major highways also, but our citizens complain about their streets and maybe we should address those. So just hoping we can work together with the staff sergeant and the data that Public Works has to identify the proper roadways or proper streets and go from there.
Perhaps if I could just jump in. So that's precisely what we're going to be speaking about at our police service board in the near future.
Perfect.
One of the things that has always been said about speeders inside the streets of Tecumseh is if we start catching speeders, they will be our neighbors. People tend to speed on their own street. It's just a fact of life. So, but I think the answer is this is one of the things we're going to be discussing when we talk about traffic and noise pollution in the near future out of our police service board. Glenn, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, certainly Councillor Tonio is correct, and he's well aware that we're an analytically driven organization. So when we have brought the resources in from other areas, so we brought officers in that don't normally would work within Essex County, they're deployed exactly where we're getting those complaints from. So we liaison with the town and also look at our data as well. So they're kind of strategically placed in order to, you know, hopefully have the most impact for the hours that they're able to be there in order to do that as well. That's what we want to do. We want to be able to reduce personal injury collisions and property damage, and certainly fatalities as well.
Ms. Evans, our CAO, I think you.
If I could on this one, particularly, I think that we have already made good headway on collaborating between our public works and the speed trailers, and Staff Sergeant Smith has been very good at responding, to the inspector's point of working with our staff to respond to those areas that are identified by the citizens and then verified by data that's collected through the public works speed trailers. So that's in a work in progress, and I think it's starting to pay off in terms of results for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions to our delegation? Yes, Councilor Dowd.
Thank you, Worship. Just a follow up on the earlier comments. So I guess what I was hearing was that being arrested and charged is no longer really a deterrent for many of our criminals. It's just part of their daily life. And so that I think that certainly makes policing challenging, because you have people entering our community who just don't care about the consequences because it doesn't really affect them if they're released onto the street pretty quickly. Or they're just unafraid of going to jail. I guess my question, I wanted to dovetail that into whether there are you have any recommendations for municipally, is there anything that we have in our power to make us less desirable for some of these people to come into our community, beyond the kind of the ongoing campaigns which are already active, such as the Lock It or Lose It, or just the reminders to residents, because it's just with no consequence, or at least no negative consequence incurred by the criminal. It seems like there's no real solution that's foreseeable.
I can start. I think there's an educational process that the Ontario Provincial Police like to bring forward to the citizens with regard to simple things, lock it or lose it, how to protect your house. They also have a course on, I'll try to get the right acronym, community safety through environmental design. It's basically, there are experts within the Ontario Provincial Police that can step forward to residences and to businesses to show them how to make their premises and their businesses safer based on simple things like getting rid of bushes that hide your home, get proper lighting on a business so that anybody skulking around that business is immediately identified. So those services are all available through the Ontario Provincial Police to our citizens to help them do things that I don't know if you want to say passively, but it helps to make their residence or their business, or I'm talking corner stores right up to tool and die shops, safer places to do your business, to operate, and your home safer place to live in. Inspector Miller, maybe you could add to that.
Yes, thanks very much for the question. I know a lot of people that are building new homes within Tecumseh and elsewhere, or incorporating SEPTED actually into the construction of their home. So they're doing it kind of right at the onset, and highly successful for sure. I understand there's a cost to that as well, I guess, in the construction cost, but they're building it in rather than kind of waiting a little bit later on. And those are in the case of providing, helping to provide some safe communities. I just think that the town of Tecumseh is a very welcoming community, and we're very fortunate. And I want to give credit to the town. I want to give credit to the leadership that all of you bring. Sometimes people don't make necessarily the best choices, and sometimes just by pure accident, that's all that it is. But it's a simple thing, and that's what individuals that really are not concerned at all about getting arrested by the police and being given a court date at all. They'll look for that opportunity. If that opportunity is not there, quite frankly, they'll move along. They'll move away. They'll go somewhere else. We can give them lots of attention, that's for sure. If it's warranted, we have to be very careful with that. But Basically, it's a catch and release situation for us. We're not really permitted to hold the people longer than it takes us to complete the necessary paperwork and give them a court date. So I can give an instance of just a short few weeks ago, we arrested a trio of individuals that were breaking into homes. We processed them, released them, and within about 9 to 10 hours later, we're back out on them again. They're committing more crimes, so taking up a lot of our time. So we certainly do our best, and most importantly, we want to work with those individuals that have become a victim of crime. We are victim focused, so we understand the impact on a resident that would have somebody on their property or breach into their property. So our intention is to spend some time with them as well and see whatever that we can do to support them so that that particular incident doesn't happen again. And in a lot of cases, quite actually, it doesn't. They simply move to another area of the community.
Okay, any further questions to our delegation? All right, I want to take this opportunity to certainly thank you, Inspector Miller, and certainly Chair Hales. I know that I believe two members of the OPP I think are in somewhere behind the squares as well. So please extend our thanks to you and certainly to the men and women that keep our communities safe, and as well, once again, on behalf of all of us, we certainly want to, our hearts certainly have gone out to the extended family. I know it's terrible when you lose, one of your members, and it's a brother and certainly a sister in blue that it's very, very difficult to accept. So please extend on behalf of all of us our heartfelt condolences to certainly the constable's extended family.
Thank you.
So members of council, can I have a motion that the 2021 Police and Police Services Board budget presentation be received? Councilor Tonio, Deputy Mayor Bichetti, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Our next delegation is Mr. Tom Kitsos, our Director of Financial Services, and also our Chief Financial Officer, and Marg Misaac Evans, our Chief Administrative Officer. And they're charged with the task of bringing in and tabling the 2021 draft budget and certainly the business plan for the coming year for the town of Tecumseh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will we'll get started with the first few slides and then turn it over to Tom. So on the proposed budget, as I mentioned, I'll give you the overview, and then the Deputy Treasurer will provide the budget document, go through the detailed operating budget, as well as our life cycle and reserves, and conclusion, and followed by Q&A this evening. And I'd point out as well that we have several capital works reports on this evening's agenda to complement the presentation. Next slide, please. So really, my job is to just give you a general and broad overview. The budget really is a strategy, and it's our plan to manage the citizens' money and other funding that we receive to deliver services that are important to our community, and to align the budget as much as we can with the mission, vision, values, and 5 strategic priorities that are set by council. The mission is indicated on the slide here. We're working strategically to accomplish sustainable growth that integrate the principles of health and wellness in everything we do, and that the vision for Tecumseh will be a community of economic vitality, environmental leadership, and high quality of life for all of our citizens. And that's undergirded by the 6 values that are seen on the bottom of that slide. Next slide, please. So there are the strategic priorities that are set out in the council approved corporate strategic plan for 2019 and 2022. You see these documented in each of our reports that we bring to council and try to make inroads into these strategic priorities all year round, and then report out to you on an annual basis in terms of the accomplishments that the whole Tecumseh team has been able to sustain in a given year. Next slide, please. In terms of the process, our proposed budget is developed by town staff and trying to pick up, as I mentioned, on the strategic priorities of council. And every year we conduct a community survey to inform the budget process of citizen priorities, and the results of this year's community survey have been provided to council, I believe, in October. Once a recommended budget has been set by town staff, it's presented to council and made public. So this evening's presentation is that initial presentation, and then the budget will be published tomorrow morning on the town's website. A special meeting is then held for budget deliberation with presentations made on the department business plans by each of the directors. And we try to respond to your questions to ensure that we have taken into consideration the priorities of council for the following year. And then, of course, there's a budget adoption day once we are there, and we've reached that that correct balance between taxation and service delivery. So you can see on the continuum on this slide that we're presenting this evening the proposed draft budget after having drafted it by town staff and taken into consideration the public input. And then our budget deliberation day is set for Wednesday, January the 13th. And if required, Thursday, January the 14th. And then it's our objective to bring back a completed budget for adoption on January 26th at the regular council meeting. Next slide, please. The budget really is an instrument in many senses of that word. It's at its most basic, the basis for determining the amount of taxation levy. As I've mentioned, it links the council priorities with the operational needs to our financial resources that are required to implement our business plans and strategic priorities, the programs and services that we routinely offer, as well as our bigger, longer visionary plans like the master plans that are underway, the official plan, and several studies. And that leads us to the capital projects. As I mentioned, there are 3 reports on this evening's agenda as well that deal with the parks and facilities, arena, and the public works projects. Our annual report then deals with addressing the strategic priorities and documenting those that we have accomplished in the given year. And over the course of the year, we use the budget as a key instrument for financial management and control, reporting out on progress, and checking in on our variance on a regular basis. Next slide, please. So in terms of the internal and what we're facing with in 2021, certainly to the extent that we can anticipate, we were certainly thrown on a lot of curveballs in 2020. Didn't anticipate a pandemic at this time last year. Now that we have those prevailing conditions, we have made the best of 2020 and believe that what we have on the books for 2021 is achievable, anticipating that we're still going to be dealing with the pandemic well into 2021. So in terms of finding efficiencies, as we've discussed already this evening, there's an organizational review that will get underway in the first couple of quarters of 2021. We will also be furthering our online service delivery offerings, implementing the HR service review that was presented to council last month, and also embarking on an IT service review. And that is important to, as we move into more of an online service delivery model, we must ensure that we are able to do that, that we have the capacity to do that, and also that we remain safe. In an age of cybersecurity issues, it's incumbent on us to make sure that we are operating as safely as possible. Town hall expansion, we're looking at that concluding very early in the new year. It's looking really good. The parts of the building are now being turned over back to the town, and we're able to move staff into the south and the east wings. And then the construction companies will be finishing up in the lobby and also making the improvements to council chambers. As part of that, we have improved the facility with protections for COVID-19, and we'll be looking at new retrofits for enhanced air quality in Town Hall, as well as implementing e-charging stations in the vicinity of the police station there to allow for electric vehicle charging. With respect to customer service, once again, enhanced technology to facilitate remote customer service delivery, as well as remote working arrangements, and then the installation of physical barriers for person-to-person service delivery in the customer service areas and public-facing parts of the building to ensure the safety of public and workers. We have lots of shovel-ready projects that are ready to commence. The big one that was recently announced is the funding for the pump station projects that was successful under the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund. We have a number of development readiness projects that I'll detail in a slide in a moment. And then, of course, our asset management and life cycle projects in water, wastewater, roads, and the like. And those are documented in the complementary reports this evening on capital works. In terms of emergency preparedness, I must say that there has been a large focus on that in 2020. Sadly, we have been, had to devote a fair number of resources to the pandemic response and also to the flood response. I can report to you that the entire workforce has been very cooperative in terms of changes to the operations. We've been very nimble in terms of working on capital projects and advancing those to the best of our abilities. And then the enhanced enforcement activities using our own bylaw enforcement staff, working in conjunction with the health unit and the OPP has of late been a big focus as we find ourselves in the red zone and needing to ensure that the rules and provincial orders and regulations are being followed. On the flood response end of things, we've been very lucky to have not experienced a flood. I do believe that the barriers that Council directed us to install on the waterfront earlier in the year have been very instrumental in saving us from some of those strong north winds over the last month to 6 weeks. However, we do maintain a state of readiness with an interjurisdictional working group of about 42 members. We met as recently as this morning. We have regular check-ins now weekly to ensure that we are prepared and even over a sustained holiday period and what have you, that people are available to respond. And we have detailed operational plans that the entire administration was involved with preparing earlier this year as we faced trying to make sure that we could evacuate and protect our residents in a time of a pandemic. And then looking at the longer term horizon with respect to lake waters and flooding, the shoreline analysis got underway under consultant Peter Zuzak's direction, and that will continue on into next year. So we're looking forward to reporting out in more public interface with respect to that study. Many other pilot studies and plans are prepared for or on the horizon for 2021. As Chair Hales mentioned, the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan now back on track to hopefully complete over the course of 2021. Our new official plan, which we're looking at completion very early in 2021. Number of stormwater master plans heading to the finish line, as well as the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Some financial instruments there with the community benefits charges, stormwater rate study to complete in the next year. And then also on the books for the planning department, the Old Castle Hamlet special planning study for future development lands on the slate for 2021. On top of that, we do try to maintain all of our programs and services, remain receptive to public needs and inquiries and complaints. We, on the internal side, are managing through staff retirements and recruitments. We do collaborate regionally with my peers in the 7 municipalities and at the county level, and then stay in close contact with senior governments for advocacy purposes, as well as funding opportunities. Next slide, please. So in terms of external forces, the risk of repeating myself, certainly on the municipal landscape, COVID-19 has factored as a very large influence on our day-to-day operations and has had an effect on our capital projects as well. And we have taken great measures and continue to do so to ensure public and worker safety. There have been frequently changing provincial legislation, regulations, and orders, and that really is, quite frankly, an understatement. Is changed almost weekly, and it's been very challenging for everyone to stay abreast. And when it comes to regional collaboration, I commend the senior management team for working very closely with their colleagues in other jurisdictions and at the provincial level to make sure that we're all interpreting things appropriately and relying on our medical officer of health for a consistency in interpretation to ensure safety. In terms of infrastructure grant programs, we continue to monitor those very closely and to look for opportunities as the governments turn their minds to economic recovery initiatives for us to come forward with a number of our bigger projects that we could certainly benefit from external assistance on. The federal and the provincial budget uncertainty, certainly is a factor for us to consider, and we monitor that, as Tom will allude to in his budget presentation. Some of the RBC trends and outlooks, some of them are good, and some of them are certainly questionable. And it'll be a year of sorting things out post-pandemic once the rollout of the vaccine becomes a little bit more certain. And then, of course, climate change. We've spoken about the threat of flooding, and that continues to be a threat on our doorstep. We, as I mentioned, we had our interjurisdictional meeting earlier today, and during the roundtable, the Conservation Authority did indicate that in next spring 2021, they're forecasting essentially the same water levels in Lake St. Clair as we were facing in the spring of 2020, which is above the 1986 high. So it's still there as a threat, and we remain committed to being ready for preventive measures and protective measures should it happen. Next slide, please. In terms of development readiness, so just circle back to that for a moment. We did see in 2020, despite all of the challenges, that certain developments are starting to come out of the ground, so to speak, with Rygate, the Harbor condos, the Harbor Club condos, and Gateway Towers having commenced, and then of course our own project on Tecumseh Road with the sewer replacement. Lots of activity happening in that area. The Skyline Apartments looking to commence in 2021, as well as Old Castle Heights, formerly known as the Del Duca subdivision application, also planning to commence in 2021. So those are ones that we're fairly certain are either going now or on the horizon, and other developments in the hopper, so to speak, that council will be dealing with in the coming 2021 year. So our budget, I think we continue to deliver value for money. We are managing services and service levels, I think, efficiently, although the organizational review will assist us in sharpening our pencils a little bit more. We do respond, I think, fairly quickly and adequately to program and service inquiries and concerns, and try to serve council as best we can in getting responses to the issues that are brought to your attention from residents. We are managing risk and issues management, optimizing technology, managing projects to the best of our ability, and ensuring fiscal responsibility, transparency, and accountability on your behalf to the public. And then, of course, as mentioned, maintaining regional, provincial, and national engagement in order to advance the town's interests on a broader plane. So with that, I'll turn it over to the Director of Financial Services, Tom Kitsos, to give you the lowdown on the 2021 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Marg, and good evening, Mayor and members of Council. We are pleased tonight to bring you the 2021 proposed business plan and budget. It does bring to culmination a great deal of time and effort on the part of many staff members to put this together and to present it tonight. So I know I speak on behalf of both Zora and I, who will also be presenting, that it is a pleasure to be presenting tonight. Our budget document is an electronic document, as has been the past few years. It is AODA compliant, and as Margaret mentioned, it will be available to the public and to council tomorrow morning. So we've got on the slide right now the format of the document. So it is similar format to past years. We do encourage the public that it is a large document, but we do certainly encourage the public that if you can only manage to read a bit, that the executive summary is brief enough and informative enough to give you a good idea of what the plan is for 2021. There's a PSAB section that is required to translate budget from modified accrual basis to full accrual. So this is accounting jargon, but it is something that is required. There's a section that I'd also like to point out, the recommended new staffing enhancements section, which we refer to as the RNSC. So this will detail any staffing enhancements that are proposed in the 2021 budget. And finally, I'd like to point out or mention that it is in PDF format, and there are bookmarks incorporated in the document to help navigate throughout the budget. So it is a large document. Next, please. So for council consideration, the proposed 2021 budget calls for a municipal levy increase of $968,000. This represents the 3.9% increase over 2020's levy. So to achieve this, a tax rate increase of 3.05% is required. So this will amount to a $55 increase to the municipal portion of the annual taxes for an average residential property. An average residential property in Tecumseh has a 2016 CVA of $250,000. Assessment growth during 2020 was a little below average for us over the past, so this didn't help to reduce the increase as much as we normally would anticipate. So we have highlighted here the portion of the increase that is attributable to capital operations as well. So this accounts for about 60% of the levy and rate increase. So we will go through details of the operating and capital drivers in later slides. So next we have the consolidated levy increase. So this refers to what property owners really can expect to experience on their property tax bill. So there are 3 levying bodies that contribute to the tax bill. So we just like to remind viewers and council that's municipal, of course, the county and the province for education purposes. So we've included estimates for the county and education levies during our budget development process in order to try to anticipate what a property owner can expect on their tax bill. So the county did come through with, I think they approved their tax rate of 0.49%, which is close to what we had used in our development process. So what this total increase comes to is about $61 on their total tax bill for an average residential property, which is about a 1.5% increase. And finally, on this slide, we do reference postponement of the 2020 assessment update that MPAC would have done this past year. So in my previous comments, we do speak of averages and average residential property. So we do like to remind people that although those are averages, anyone's personal tax bill will be unique and it's based on your own assessed value. So the actual property tax that a property owner will pay is a function of the levying body tax rates multiplied by their assessed value. This assessed value is determined by MPAC, and they do all properties in all of Ontario. They do this exercise every 4 years. The last time that they conducted this exercise was in 2016, and that was for tax years 2017 through 2020. They were to update the assessed values for 2021 using January 1, 2019 values. However, that was postponed due to the pandemic. So what that does mean for property owners is that your assessed value for 2021 will be the same as it was for 2020, which is the full phased in CVA 2016 value. So I will now turn the presentation over to Zora, who will go on to speak to the next few slides.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. Due to the unusual year, some of the budget timelines are a little later than in years past in order to allow time for extra analysis. We started the budget development process mid-September. Departments submitted requested budgets in early October, with CAO and department reviews occurring the remainder of the month. The initial requested budget would have resulted in a 6.1% increase to the municipal tax levy. However, CAO review sessions brought the increase down to 3.39 net of growth through some expenditure cutting or deferral and some additional revenue recognition and reserve transfers. Next slide. The budget development process for the department requested budgets includes 2 outlook years, 2022 and 2023. Finance projects an additional 2 years to produce a 5-year municipal levy projection. Outlook years include known or likely budget drivers and inflationary increases for certain expenditure and revenue types. The projection is broken out into 3 major budget driver categories: operational drivers, life cycle capital drivers, assessment growth, for a total increase of 3.39% proposed. And for reference, 1% is equal to about $240,000. Next slide. This slide shows how we fared with past projections. During last year's budget process, we had projected a levy increase for 2021 of 2.7%. Not too far off the 3.39, considering all the external forces that were unknown at the time. Projections for the past couple of years have generally been close to actual. Some benefits of incorporating this practice in our budget process are: it keeps the focus on longer-term goals and objectives of council. It quickly highlights impacts to future year levies of current budget year decisions. Next slide. This slide shows the annual percentage change to the residential base tax rate for the past several years. This has typically not been something that we highlight, as our focus during the budget process is on service delivery and impact to the levy in actual dollars. The tax rate is the end result of that calculation. However, many levying bodies refer to this measure, and it results in some confusion about what is actually happening with taxes. There are 2 distinct factors to this chart. 2012 to 2013, where Tecumseh's annual rate change far surpassed the Essex County average. Factors at that time were negative assessment growth with a 2012 CVA, high industrial vacancy rebates, a large number of assessment appeals, write-offs of nearly 2% of the levy, minimal development activity, and its second to the last year in the life cycle 10-year plan, and OPP costs of 25% of the annual levy. Then, from 2015 to 2020, Tecumseh's annual rate change was close to 0% or less, actually negative of 4 of those 6 years, and has averaged a 0.6% decrease per year over the 6 years. For 2021, as mentioned earlier, the proposed increase to the tax rate is 3.05%. The 2021 increase in Tecumseh's annual tax rate can largely be attributed to the absence of phased-in market value assessment increases. Compounding this effect for Tecumseh is in-year assessment growth was well below recent experience. Next slide. Key expenditure impacts. The budget includes a $200,000 increase towards the new infrastructure levy, bringing the annual levy to $1.75 million. This represents a 0.8% increase to the general tax levy for 2021. The target is $2.35 million, and the purpose of this levy is to help fund known near-term new capital investments. And please note that $550,000 of this levy has been earmarked for the multi-use sportsplex. Life cycle has been increased by $366,000, which represents a 1.5% increase to the levy. This increase is required to address new asset additions and specific life cycle category deficiencies identified in recent study updates, most notably storm. Details are fully explained in the life cycle section of the budget document. As for wages and benefits, known increases have been included, as well as a provision for increases pending the outcome of collective bargaining for those contracts expiring in 2020, as well as a provision for benefits increases yet to be determined, and a provision for a significant increase to insurance. We are proposing, in addition, a $75,000 one-time increase for the financial incentive program under the Tecumseh Road Community Improvement Plan in support of several significant development undertakings in the Tecumseh core. Not a great deal of other items, $97,000 for the balance of operations, which includes increases to contracts for police and garbage collection. And worth noting, the storm budget was increased by $100,000 one time for flood mitigation again this year. These one-time costs are offset by a reserve transfer, so there will be no net impact to the levy. Next slide. On the revenue side, we're expecting $150,000 in assessment growth while the next development projects take shape. And building permit revenue has been increased one time by $183,000 in anticipation of residential and non-residential development. The global pandemic has affected all of us, as individuals, as an organization, as a community. Whereas the previous slides addressed more typical budget pressures that we're used to, we felt that it was important to highlight the COVID-19 impacts. And as you can see from this slide, they're quite significant. For the proposed budget, we are expecting impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic to continue into 2021. Revenue reductions are anticipated primarily in recreation user fees and lottery licenses. Additional expenditures have been budgeted for safety measures required to support service delivery during the pandemic. Program changes and one-time transfers from the tax rate stabilization reserve are included to neutralize estimated COVID-19 pressures on town operations. And this is to ensure there is no direct effect on the tax levy. And then we took it one step further and looked at additional cost containment measures. One-time reductions to professional development and education were introduced for the 2021 budget. This year, the town's effective cost containment measures, along with the federal and provincial Safe Restart Agreement grant funding, are expected to produce a significant operating surplus at year end, which will be used to support 2021 COVID-19 pressures. There are several items that could potentially have a significant impact to the municipal levy that have not been factored into the budget. Collective bargaining for agreements set to expire December of this year. Although there is a provision, the actual outcome is to be determined. And the organizational review, which is likely to commence early next year, outcome of the lottery license litigation, storm drainage master plans implementation. The master plan that was completed in 2019 recommended 107 million in surface flooding solutions. And finally, multi-use sportsplex operating costs have not been factored into the outlook years, but note, as I mentioned earlier, there is a provision for debt financing. Next slide. This slide shows operating budget expenditures by type. With the life cycle taken out, wages and benefits at 9.6 million comprise 46% of the operating budget expenditures. Contract services is 28%, and the big ones here are police at 3.5 million, garbage collection at 640,000, garbage disposal at 830,000, and IRCA at 290,000. Next slide. Revenues. No changes here from previous years. Property taxation makes up 81%. User charges and investment income are each around 4 to 5%. And we really have a limited ability to generate income outside of taxation. We do look to increase user rates such as ICE rentals by CPI annually. However, in most cases, increases are less due to competitive factors. Our investment policy provides some opportunity to increase investment income, with the post-retirement reserve being invested in the One Equity Fund. Next slide. As discussed briefly earlier, with the proposed 2021 budget, the average home assessed at $250,000 would pay an additional $61 in annual property taxes. $55 of that $61 is for the municipal levy. And again, the proposed tax rate increase for the town portion is 3.05%. Next slide. This slide compares our assessment mix to that of the Essex County average. Residential assessment is similar to the average of 78%. We differ by a fair amount in the other broad categories, however. We do have a greater direct exposure to economic booms and busts due to our greater than average commercial and industrial assessment. And we saw evidence of that with the tax rate changes during 2012 to 2013. Next slide. For 2021, a residential property tax bill will be about 11% education, 54% municipal, and 35% county levy. Next slide. By contrast, a non-residential property tax bill will be about 40% education, 36% municipal, and 24% county. During the last 10 years, we have seen a common pattern countywide: increasing municipal levies, increasing county levies, and decreasing education levies. Combined with increasing assessed values for residential properties and stagnant or decreasing values for commercial and industrial, this will tend to shift the tax burden away from the commercial and industrial properties over to residential properties. Next slide. And now for a comparative with our neighbors. Overall, Tecumseh sits second lowest in combined property tax and water wastewater user rates when calculated for a home assessed at $250,000 with a monthly water usage of 20 cubic meters. Kingsville is at the low end at $4,000, with Leamington at the high end at $5,900. Tecumseh is at $4,400. And now I'll turn it over to Tom, who will discuss the rate-supported budget next.
Thank you, Zora. So while our previous slides dealt with the general tax rate and general levy, The next few slides will speak to the rate-supported services, which are water and wastewater. So these two services are supported by user rates, and those are calculated through a periodic exercise that takes into account full costing of these services, including operating and capital costs. The exercise is the water and wastewater rate study, and it is performed using a 10-year time horizon and is typically updated every 5 years. The study considers things such as rate structure, for example, the use of fixed rate, variable rate, or a combination of the two, population growth, and future capital needs. The latest study was completed in 2015 and was intended to guide rates for years 2016 through 2020. The study was to be updated during 2020. However, due to the pandemic, this update was postponed to 2021. So as the 2015 study was based on a 10-year time horizon, administration recommends continuing with the recommendations of the 2015 study for 1 additional year. The town uses a combination of fixed and variable rates, where in 2015, about 30% of revenues were derived from fixed charges and 70% from variable or consumption charges. With such a big portion of revenues dependent on usage and with consumption volumes declining, revenues have fallen short of budget most years. So a main objective of the 2015 study was to gradually shift the revenue mix so that in 10 years' time, the ratio would change from a 30-70 split to a 40-60 split. To do this requires larger increases to the fixed rate and lesser increases to the variable rate. For 2021, administration recommends continuing with the guidance of the 2015 study, which calls for a 6% increase to fixed rates, a 1% increase to water rates, and a 2% increase to wastewater rates. The overall increase to an average residential user will be an increase of about 3.3% or $32 per year. Rate revenues generated by each service are expected to total about $4.9 million in wastewater and $5.5 million in water. This will allow for a combined transfer to reserve funds of about $4.4 million for 2021. The next two slides illustrate how those user rates are used for water and wastewater services. So this slide includes the capital and interfund portion, where transfer to capital rates represents the amount of revenues that are transferred to capital reserve funds, and transfer interfunctional represents amounts transferred to the general fund as an interfund administrative charge for overhead. So 42% of user fees go towards capital reserves, underscoring the significant cost of infrastructure. 6% of fees go to the general levy in respect of administrative services such as IT, accounting, and human resources. You'll note purchase for resale represents the cost of bulk water purchased from the Windsor Utilities Commission, and contract services represents sanitary treatment costs contracted through the City of Windsor at their Little River and Lou Romano reclamation plants. So in this slide, we just remove the transfer to capital and the interfund transfer. So this really highlights the cost of daily operations. You'll see there's three main drivers: wages and benefits, purchases for resale, and contract services, all are at around 30% of total operating expenditures. So this slide shows the bar chart that shows the difficulty that we have had in achieving our rate studies projected transfers to capital reserves, and supports our study recommendations. You'll see in actual transfers to capital for years 2018 and 19 appear quite lower than 2021. Actual transfers to capital reserve funds for those 2 years fell close to $300,000 below budget. 2020 is projecting to be about $50,000 below budget. So we've identified some key drivers or items in the wastewater service. The multi-year sanitary sewer expansion in the Old Castle area, and which commenced around, I think, 2008 with trunk installation, is planned to continue for the next many years. The next two phases, County Road 46 Webster Laval and the Del Duca Drive extensions, are in engineering and pre-construction phases through 2021, with expected installation and connection for 2022. Combined costs for these two phases is around $9.3 million. Flood mitigation has also been a key item for wastewater services the past several years. So we have had some successful rehab phases, sanitary sewer rehab phases 1 and 2 that were completed, I believe, in 2019. These phases were largely funded through senior level government grant funding from OCIF and CWWF programs. The 2 phases are complete, and early signs are that inflow and infiltrations levels have improved. Important to note that these 2 phases targeted municipal infrastructure, so there still exists a concern with private property inflow and infiltration. Another major project on the go is a sanitary sewer model update, which is to be completed in 2021. This incorporates flow monitoring and will be able to evaluate effectiveness of the above mentioned program and identify other areas of concern. Once complete, we should get an idea of the impact of private property inflow and infiltration. We also have noted here the water wastewater master plan update was completed in late 2019. So we will use data from this plan to help us update the water wastewater rate study in the upcoming year, and results from this, the water wastewater master plan are also used in our 5-year capital plans. Some key items in the water area. So we do purchase water from Windsor Utilities Commission based on a bulk water supply agreement. So this agreement dates back to 2004, became effective in 2006. The agreement does provide for the town to purchase water in bulk from Windsor Utilities Commission for a 50-year period. The agreement established the initial cost of water and a methodology for rate increases. The agreement also allows for WUC to request rate adjustments at each 10-year anniversary throughout the duration of the agreement. The first such request occurred in 2016. So as council is aware, the sides could not agree on the rate adjustment. It went to mediation where an agreement was reached that a 9% increase to the rate effective 2017, and also required that the town and WUC go through a mediation arbitration process to resolve the differences in interpretation of the agreement with respect to rate adjustment. So this process was essentially resolved about a month ago with the town and WUC agreeing to minutes of settlement. This provides some certainty with respect to annual rate increases, which will continue as per the original agreement at CPI each year, and provided for guidance in identifying costs eligible for rate adjustment consideration. The minutes of settlement also provided guidance on calculation of the rate adjustment and eliminated the summer levy, which was a surcharge to the town from Windsor Utilities Commission for summer months. The town continues with our water main replacement program. So that is to remove cast iron and ductile iron water main from our infrastructure. The 2021 capital program will include provision for $1.1 million in water main replacement. We also plan to continue with the anode installation program. So this was started a few years back and we've had some success with this. It extends the life of cast iron and ductile iron infrastructure and has proven highly successful in reducing the amount of water main breaks. Next slide, please. So now we'll switch to the capital program and funding strategy. So this impacts all services, so both general and rate supported services. So on this slide, we just want to highlight the capital program and our funding strategy for the town. So we implemented a life cycle program in 2005 that established reserves by asset category, and those are intended for asset replacement. In 2015, the town implemented a new infrastructure levy program that established a reserve for new or enhanced asset purchases, addressing a void in the life cycle program. The establishment of these 2 reserve programs ideally can lead to pay as you go. However, that will take time, seeing as we essentially started at 0. Pay as you go would be ideal, but it does rely on some outside factors. So ultimately, we do require senior level government assistance through grant programs to assist with municipal infrastructure. And those grant programs do not always or will not always align with our priorities. So therefore, some requirement for debt financing for larger projects will be required. So we include here just some reference or examples of debt financing with respect to interest costs that can be experienced for a large loan that goes over a long period of time. And that's really just for reference purposes. With respect to grant funding, under the current taxation system, there will be a reliance on senior levels of government to provide financial support. This has been acknowledged by both the federal and provincial governments when the asset management plan and building together programs were launched in 2012. There will always be some challenges with senior government grant programs, so they may tempt us to divert from our plans and priorities. They may not be predictable or stable, and some may be competitive in nature, whereby we may have suitable projects but may not win the lottery. However, programs such as the federal gas tax, Ontario Communities Infrastructure Fund, or OCIF, and Investing in Canada Infrastructure Plan, ICIP, are certainly welcome and demonstrate a commitment from senior government towards municipal infrastructure. Ultimately, having healthy reserves and projects engineered and shovel ready will provide the town with financial flexibility to optimize grant opportunities. Next slide. So in our capital works program, typically departments will present their 5-year capital plans with recommendations for proposed projects following the budget process or the approved budget. So those reports would seek approval for current year, and council will receive a forecast for the upcoming 4 years. So this year we're doing it a little bit differently in that you will see a few capital plans tonight in advance of approval and adoption of the budget. So we're doing that tonight really in order to either continue with capital projects that were approved last year and we wish to continue on early in the new year, or to gain approval for some projects that are replacement in nature and have funding sources already identified. The life cycle capital budget for 2021 calls for expenditures of $26.3 million. So to put that in context, our allocation to capital reserves for 2020 was around $9.8 million. So the 2021 program does call for significant use of our reserves. We've listed some of the more notable projects planned for in 2021. So that includes the Manning Road East Town Line Drain relocation phase 2. That's at close to $7 million. So this will divert East Town Line drain flows into the channel in Lakewood Park and is a big part of the storm's drainage plans. It is a 2-part project, so there's a phase 3 that would be likely the following year. And we will use banked OCIF funds from 2018 to 2020 to help offset those costs. We also have the L'Esperance Via Rail improvements at around $1.6 million to address the crossing at L'Esperance. We have applied for grant funding through the Rail Safety Improvement Program for assistance and are awaiting a decision. This grant could potentially fund up to 80% of the costs. As Margaret mentioned earlier, we did recently receive good news of the award through the DMAF fund that will provide grant funding of up to 40% or $10.7 million towards the replacement and enhancement of 3 storm pump stations, the Scully, St. Mark's, and PJ Cecile. These works will take several years to complete. The grant does require that the works be completed by March of 2028. The town did start engineering on the Scully and St. Mark's pumps in 2019 and will continue with engineering and design works for those 2 pump stations and the PJ Cecile during 2021, with construction anticipated to commence in 2022. We also have the Manning Road secondary planning area, or the Merspa Pond design and construction here. So this is really more for design. So design work started in 2020 and will continue in 2021, allowing for construction in 2022. So those costs there, the 1 million is just the additional design costs. So this is a significant piece of infrastructure that is vital for development of what is known as the Merspa lands. We also have here the Riverside Drive Trail at around $1 million and a pickleball complex proposed at $0.6 million. Debt payments currently in 2021 will be about $1.8 million. Next slide, please. So we prepared this slide for the 2021 pre-budget council consultation. back in September. So it is a little bit dated, however, it is still relevant. And so the things we want to point out here, so although we have healthy reserves, the capital expenditures planned for the next few years will deplete those reserves. So this slide assumes no debt will be issued and complete reliance on reserves, with the exception that it does include DMAF grant funding for the storm pump stations. The figures in this schedule draw from our 2018 asset management plan for planned expenditures. We did add the storm pump station upgrade because that was not included in the asset management plan in 2018. We also included front-end financing required to advance development in the Mercer area, and by way of the town construction of the stormwater management pond with assumption of gradual recovery. It also includes multi-use sportsplex, as that was included in our asset management plan, however, a lower dollar value, but it still is relevant for this exercise. The capital reserves will go from positive 20 million to negative 19 million in 5 years under this scenario. This, of course, means that to accomplish these projects in this time frame will require other sources of funding, either additional grant opportunities or debt. Next slide, please. This slide has a chart that illustrates municipal debt under the scenario where we would borrow about $35 million over the course of a few years to help fund the sportsplex, storm pump stations, and front-end storm infrastructure in the Mercer area. The debt funding in this scenario is around 10 million for the sportsplex, as was the original plan proposed to council. Annual debt payments would go from current levels of about $2 million a year to over $5 million a year at its max. We've also included in this chart the 10% debt repayment threshold, and we've projected that out into the future. This level is important as the province defines annual debt repayments in excess of 10% as high debt levels. Notwithstanding the province's classification, debt payment at this level could impact the timing and or scope of other capital projects. So it does emphasize the importance of sequencing. So on this slide, we highlight some life cycle and new infrastructure key items. So for the 2021 budget, we did update our life cycle annual requirement. So this goes from 7.8 million to 9.4 million as our targeted annual allocation. So key drivers for this increase, actually the 3 bullets I have here apply to both life cycle and new infrastructure, but key drivers to that increase are recent replacement costs that we've experienced, particularly with fleet. So we've experienced some significant costs there. Storm life cycle, and that was highlighted with the master plan. And there's also enhancements to our infrastructure through sportsplex and CIP streetscapes, parks, recreation, and trail enhancements. The new infrastructure levy has a target of 2.35 million. Right now, we are at 1.55 million, proposing to go up to 1.75 million for 2021. With increases of $200,000 per year, we would reach our target by 2024. Availability of grants is listed here as well, and this is identified as a key item. As for major projects like those discussed earlier, grant funding would be needed in order to proceed in our hoped for timeframe. So on this slide, we show our reserves summary. So we've got our actual balances as at year-end 2019 and projected year-end balances for 2020 and 2021. So we have, over the past several years, accumulated healthy reserves. 2021 activity, as identified in earlier slides, will draw down close to 10 million of those reserves with significant capital project construction planned for 2022, which would be a further drawdown. Some major balances shown. Sanitary sewer at minus 702,000 is gradually digging itself out of a hole, so it had been in a significant negative position. Our tax rate stabilization reserve at around 2.8 million is a little below of where we would like to see it targeted. So best practices indicate it should be around 15% of our levy. which would be around 3.6 million. I would like to point out though that the tax rate stabilization valuation there projected for 2020 does not include the anticipated surplus that we would see going into that reserve in 2021. Next slide, please. So some key impacts to our reserves. So in 2021, we anticipate $24.3 million used towards capital and some operating projects. So for the tax rate stabilization reserve, this reserve is used to fund ongoing lottery litigation. It is also our operating support for COVID revenue and expenditure financial pressures. It is also operating support for flood preparedness planning. We've listed here the life cycle storm reserve, as this reserve in particular has been under a lot of pressure. So that's following storm drainage master plans that recommend over $100 million in projects. We do project that this particular life cycle reserve will be in a negative position at the end of 2020 of negative 1.1 million. And this is one of the life cycle categories that we are proposing a rather healthy increase in 2021. We are also currently in the progress of preparing a stormwater rate study. So this was started in 2020, will be completed in early 2021. And this proposes treating storm rates similar to water and wastewater. So that means we would impose storm rates on property owners and remove storm from the general tax rate. Also a significant impact to the storm life cycle reserve is the DMAF grant funding that we spoke about earlier. So this is certainly welcome. We also have in here reference to the sanitary sewer development charge reserve fund. So our overall, we do have several categories in the development charge reserve funds that are in negative position. The most significant is the stormwater at 12.1 million as of year-end 2019. And this has caused a drain on our wastewater reserve fund. We do see some signs of improvement though. We do think we've bottomed out. So in 2020, we do anticipate some strong results with DC revenues, and we expect that this figure will improve. It is, of course, our DC reserve funds, of course, are dependent on development. Next slide, please. So that concludes our presentation. We do have budget deliberations, as mentioned earlier, scheduled for January 13th, and then for January 14th, if necessary. We will be in a position for budget approval for January, as early as January 26th at the regular council meeting. The budget document will be posted to the town's website, and a link will be provided to council Wednesday morning. So it is a big document. Again, there is a lot of information, but we like to remind folks that if you do want to get to the basics of it, you just need to really read the executive summary. I do want to thank all the directors and managers for their contributions to this exercise and final product that we are quite proud of. I also like to thank the finance staff who participated on this project, and it's Kim and Janie, and with special thanks to Nick and Zora, who've really put in extraordinary efforts to prepare this document. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. I know I've got a lot of questions. I couldn't write fast enough, so in that regards, but one of them in particular, well, we just found out, obviously, that OCIF 1,770,000, that's our allocation, I believe, this year. Now, has that been included into the revenue side or built into the capital?
So no, at the time of budget development, we did not know that the 2021 OCIF funds were approved. So they were pending approval by the province. We have been accumulating OCIF funds in reserve for storm projects. So it is definitely welcome news it will go into the reserve and it will help to offset some of these significant costs that are storm related.
Could ask the mayor, he would have told you that you were getting OCIF money. Okay, so then you made mention about the Manning Road, the East Town Line grading diversion, the 7.1 million. So you mentioned that the OCIF funding would be utilized towards that project.
Yes, so the intention is, so OCIF program requires that there are eligible costs to use those funds. So we will use OCIF funds towards the eligible portions, so the storm-related portions of that project. So we anticipate using about 1.8 million of our banked reserves towards assisting that project in 2021. Our current reserves for the OCIF are around 2.9.
Oh. Okay. The other thing too is on the, just to let you know as well, is that I do have tomorrow an Essex Power meeting, and there should be some good news there of additional revenue.
Well, we welcome that.
Yeah, I'm sure. The other question I have too, Tom, is, we had mentioned about, pay as you go and looking at exhausting the reserves and so forth and that at this stage here, but looking at with the recovery and looking at what even mention of the Bank of Canada and so forth, where they're looking at rates being stable for not only 21, but well into 23 and 24. Money right now in under, I don't know, Infrastructure Ontario or Infrastructure Canada, money's cheap right now. Does it make sense to start, depleting some of those reserves? By what I'm saying is, not that I'm a firm believer of a lot of debt, but you can invest money and make money, in particular through one fund in other areas, on monies over a 2-3 year period, and on short-term debentures. I don't know if that makes any sense, but to me, it took us a while to build those reserves, and I know they're there for a purpose, but it seemed like a real quick deceleration in terms of the reserves to pay for obviously a lot of the capital.
Yes, and that illustration really was to show that we will require some other sources of funding, because that is not our intent, is to drive reserves to zero. Interest rates are very low right now. They are very enticing. So that is an option that we definitely are considering. The reason we show that slide is we just want to be mindful of a few things. And one is that although I think the town has done a very good job at planning and engineering for these projects, and we have a lot of things, a lot of interests on the go. Unfortunately for us, a lot of these projects will require funding pretty much all at the same time based on the existing plans that we have. So there'll be a challenge financially, but there'll also be a challenge physically in trying to manage all those projects. So that's a topic for another discussion. But ultimately, yes, to your point, interest rates are very low. We would definitely recommend borrowing at these rates. We do also recommend being very mindful of the 10% threshold. That is something that we personally would like to stay below if we can. We do think that we could make use of some internal funds to accomplish that. But we that will require some further analysis. But definitely, if we are to move forward with these projects, some debt will be incurred, and the interest rates are very low.
Okay, and I mean, looking at the capital investment for 2020, it's pretty ambitious for a small community. I'm looking at our neighbors in that, and with certainly bigger population, and I think it's very ambitious in that regard. So I know that through our and maybe some explanation to certainly members of the audience that are here, but in particular as we march onto the project, and that is, we've been pretty regimental in terms of using that terminology, life cycle, end of life, and replacing aging infrastructure and so forth. That those dollars are really a picture of our infrastructure as we move forward. Because some might say, you know what? Why don't we do 19 million instead of 24 and not worry about it? But again, I think the explanation and Phil will probably do a better job. But my point is that would be deferring future life cycling repairs or certainly replacements. And instead of thinking of pausing 5 million or whatever in a year, you'd end up paying 7 or 8 million to replace down the road. So I think that's another issue, because they always get it every year. And I don't know about other members of council, but it's always, well, if you didn't do this, you'd save X. Well, not really. All you're doing is postponing the inevitable.
Yeah, and that's true there. It's very difficult for anyone to say what might happen or what would have happened. So that's definitely a consideration. I will say that the administration definitely goes over these plans thoroughly. And we build the budget on achieving our projects and the council's objectives and providing services as our council and our community requires or requests.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Tom. Questions, members of council? Go ahead, Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Your Worship. First off, thank you, Tom and Zora and all the staff who contributed to the budget this year. I know it's been very difficult, and certainly I want to give you my appreciation for doing your best in trying to limit the impact to residents while keeping our services intact. And I wanted to go back, and this might be a question best destined for Phil, actually. And it was the reference to the storm drainage master plan not being part of the funding here. And I guess I'm curious as to when that plan implementation will hit our budget and will be part of our budget deliberations going forward.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Dowie, there is a report on tonight for the pre-approval of the 2021 Public Works and Environmental Services capital projects. And in those projects for 2021, there are a number of initiatives that were components of the Tecumseh Storm Drainage Master Plan, one being the Manning Road Phase 2 improvement projects. The others are the continuing engineering on the Scully and St. Mark's pumping station, and as well as the initiation or I guess the start of the detailed design for the PJ Cecile pump station as well. As part of the grant funding from DMAF, the DMAF program, the municipality will have to bring back a report to council for authorization to enter into agreement with the federal government, as well as to prove allocation of the municipal component of that project. So the DMAF projects were, I believe, 26.75 million. So we'll have to come back and ask for an allocation of the 16.05 million, which would be the municipal component. And at that time, we'll provide council kind of a tentative schedule moving forward. I know Tom indicated that the end dates, the completion date of the program is March 2028. However, we do have some strategies on trying to get out of the gate a little bit quicker and have the completion by the end of 2026. This is trying to keep with municipalities also in the area receiving DMAF grant funding, City of Windsor as well as LaSalle. The majority of those projects are also related to pump stations. So we thought that there was some strategy in getting out of the gate first and having our projects tendered and designed prior to some of those other ones in the area.
Go ahead, supplementary, Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Phil, for the reminder that yes, the pump stations were actually the key recommendations of the Storm Drainage Master Plan. So yes, they are there, and so I mean it's a great, certainly a great start. I remain curious as to, I know there were a lot of local neighborhood projects, and I wonder, are they in store for just being brought forward as part of the capital works plan in the future, or does council need to make a dedicated ask to have those added to the existing life cycle program?
Through you, Your Worship, I believe as we move forward, we were hoping to try and integrate them with other infrastructure projects. Currently, we're also looking at a kind of a strategic water main replacement. Although our water main breaks are low because of our anode protection program, the cast iron and ductile iron will come to the end of its life cycle sooner than later. So we are trying to identify the needs on the water infrastructure, the road infrastructure, as well as the proposed storm sewers, and trying to put forth a plan where we can consolidate some of these infrastructures as one project moving forward. So yes, we do have plans on trying to integrate them into our plans.
Thank you. No further questions.
I just want to pick up from Councillor Dowie's point and what you just referred to on the water, and especially the replacement of the the iron ductile piping in that. And you were talking about life cycling that, but isn't the dollars those are supported by the commodity or the rates of water and wastewater for replacement costs of those lines? They're not dedicated from the tax rate.
Yes, you're correct. They are rate supported.
Okay. Yeah. Any further questions or comments to admin? All right, well, we've got some work to do, some homework, and we'll be back at it on January 13th. So I have a motion that the draft budget and business plan be tabled for discussion at the special council meeting scheduled for Wednesday, January 13th in the new year. Moved by Councillor Tonio, supported by Deputy Mayor Bichetti. On the question, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Again, on behalf of council, certainly I want to thank administration for the preparation of this document. Not easy, and I know you probably spent more than a morning, to figure it out. And so thank you on our behalf, because we know in those terms that these are tough decisions that are made, but on behalf of all of us, thank you for your work, and in particular under some crazy times under the COVID-19 flood mitigation, the flood issues, under emergency situations, and then at the end of the day, just keeping things moving. So well done. We'll move on to communications. Members of council, we have 17 pieces to deal with. If I could have a motion at the moment to receive the communications. Councillor Houston and Councillor Dowie. So on receipt, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Communication for action, if there's any that members of council want to bring forward. Councillor Dowie, Councillor Jobin.
Thank you, Worship. Item 19 related to the County of Essex correspondence from just last week. Removal of Windsor International Airport from NAV Canada closure list.
Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. That's one I'd love to see brought forward for our support, given how important that is for our certainly our economy and even our quality of life here.
Well, thank you, Councillor Dowie. Yes, we did discuss that last week, and this is critical for us. And you know, from standpoint of tourism industry, you know, the cross-border issues, and certainly economic development, in particular with our strong automotive presence here and our tool and mold industry, and actually, this is you know, a very busy airport. And so this is a critical point that hopefully our NAVCAN certainly understand the importance of that airport. And again, you know, it seems at this end of the province, it seems we're at the outer limits. But it plays certainly a tremendous role for our intermodal as well. And so it's critical, and even access as simple as getting to Pelee Island, especially in 6 months of the year when the ferry shuts down. I mean, they're dependent on that airport to get off the island, and so you know, without access to air traffic controllers, it could be certainly adding another you know, another difficult situation to certainly those folks and in a wide range of other issues. So thank you for that. And so so are you prepared, Councillor Dowie, to move recommendation that we support the recommendation from the county?
Yes.
So move, and do I have support? Councillor Ottenhoff, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you very much. Councillor Jobin.
Yes, thank you, through Mr. Mayor. It's in, I've prepared actually a motion in reference to Bill 229, and there's a number of correspondence on the agenda here to receive some of it. But I'd first like to hear from, if we could, our Director of Planner, Brian Hillman, and what it means to our municipalities, as today, actually, the bill was not supposed to be passed till the 10th, but it was passed today. So if Brian could maybe just weigh in on that and what it means for the municipalities.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and I'll do my best. I mean, this was a bill that came forward, of course, as part of the budget provincially. So it's just information that has become available relatively recently. So, you know, I'll give really a high level, I think, just summary of maybe some of the impacts that we see may affect the town. And there's really significant changes, but I think there's about 5 issues. One is around the issue of, well, there's some good things. First of all, I should start with, there are sections of the act that are looking at some increased transparency and so on. We think that's helpful. But there are some changes that would affect, I think, planning potentially in the town. It would appear that there is sort of a change from the role of the CAs, the conservation authorities, to no longer to have a land use planning appeal process. So they're basically a part of a planning process, it would seem, but they're losing their status as a public body, which is a term used in the Planning Act. And they would have sort of a relegated role from the perspective of really not having the ability to appeal certain planning decisions. So that could cause some concerns. It seems to be a new permit appeal process that would be available for applicants to the Conservation Authority, where you're looking to do something that's out of the sort of a normal, maybe a prohibited process otherwise. And decisions of the Conservation Authority would usually be heard by the authority and decided there, but now there's an appeal process to the minister. So there were, you know, we've been reading about some concerns as to how that might work. That's a new process. And of course, I think the process to date has been, you know, we rely on the authority to provide technical input, and those decision-making processes, we rely on them to be very technical as well. So that's just a process that's sort of unfamiliar. In terms of how the authority would operate, there is a move to have representation of councillors, which is fine, of course. That's very similar to what happens now, but sort of the role of the councillors on the authority would change from representing the interests of the authority to representing the interest of the municipality that they're sitting there on behalf of. So, you know, in a region like ours, that can create some potentially interesting situations in terms of how decisions will be made and what interests will be protected by the authority. In, you know, a really broad issue that seems to be surfacing, and I think part of it is the lack of clarity in the regulation that has come forward, because a lot is to come out of future regulations to be provided by the government. But there's a, you know, conservation authorities are generally based on the concept of watershed-based planning. And, you know, we rely on that at the town because a lot of the watersheds in our area cross municipal boundaries, and we rely on the authority to look at issues through the lens of the watershed, not the municipal jurisdiction so much. So there's concerns around how that will all play out in the future. And then on a very technical front, it appears that there may be limitations on the authority's ability to have stop work orders, which is primarily of interest in an area where we have flood risks and so on. In the town, of course, at our north end in particular, we have a significant part of the town that is within a flood-prone area. So, you know, generally speaking, it's hard to fully comprehend the changes that are being proposed by the government. They're certainly broad in scope and substantive, and some of the underlying rationale wasn't provided with legislation itself. So I think we're all just feeling our way right now, and we really look forward to seeing how the details get spelled out in future regs. But I think generally there would be just a level of concern at this point as to how things will play out. And hopefully that helps to some extent, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Councilor Jobin?
Yes, well, I just have found, you know, in my experience on the IRCA board is that they came to fruition based upon old planning habits. I mean, no one wanted to listen for a long time about shoreline protection and the 100-year flood plan and all these different things that we have been experiencing at this time. Sexy shoreline development that was put in place 40 years ago is struggling right now. And without the direction of the Conservation Authority and then mitigating that, I think that's going to put different pressures on our municipalities that they just don't have the skill and technology to withstand or to uphold. So my motion is not grossly aggressive. It is just to have a basis of continuing a relationship and to not fully take on the powers of the Conservation Authority. I think every body of governance needs a police officer. I feel like, Mark, did you want to weigh in?
Actually, we're in your hands, Councillor Jobin. Perhaps you might want to share the motion and then maybe.
Sure.
Before the motions be made, Councillor Jobin, I just want to weigh in that and add to Mr. Hillman's comments. And in the area of concern is Section 6 of the bill. And I can tell you, Councillor Jobin, that AMO, the association, is very, very, very much opposed to that section. I know that President Graydon Smith has been in constant dialogue with Minister Clark, and I think that the board itself, AMO board, is still going to be continuing dialogue with the province. So if we can specify or specifically into that particular section, a lot of it that Mr. Hillman that brought forward is in that section. And one of the items, there are some good things, don't get me wrong, within the bill, but it's one that I think needs some massaging on that one, because I think it makes it difficult. And this is where AMO is coming from as well, is that, the hat that you're going to wear when you're sitting there, is it going to be the municipal hat, or are you going to be sitting there as a board member of the authority, which, it boils down to fiduciary responsibility. And I think that I think is where also AMO is coming from. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that, to attention of council. But that particular section is the one that seems to be, the problem child.
Mhm. Okay, well, then I'll put forth my motion. I'm asking for this council to support a motion that the Township of Tecumseh support my recommendation that the province of Ontario repeal Schedule 6 of the Budget Measures Act, that the province continue to work with conservation authorities to find workable solutions to reduce red tape and create conditions for growth, that the province respect the current conservation authority and municipal relationships, and that the province embrace their longstanding partnership with the conservation authorities, provide them with the tools and financial resources they need to effectively implement their watershed management role. And that copies of the motion be sent to Premier of Ontario, Minister of Finance, Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, local MPPs, IRCA, AMO, and the area municipalities.
Did you include AMO in that?
I certainly did.
Thank you very much. On that motion, do I have support? Councillor Altenhoff? Questions or comments? Councillor Dowie?
Thank you, Worship. I guess where I'm, this has passed as of today. So a repeal would be, I'm not sure if a repeal is feasible at this point. And I saw AMO's one recommendation as forwarded by Mr. Bartnick was a delay in the proclamation so that some of these uncertainties could be resolved. I'm wondering if you'd consider a friendly amendment to, in lieu of using the repeal language, to mirror what AMO had put, asking for a proclamation postponement for that, the very purpose of the remainder of your motion.
All right. I'm gonna, if the mover and the seconder are willing to look at the wording, if not, maybe I can ask for a motion on the amendment, certainly on the amendment. I could do that. But but Councillor Dowie is right. That's exactly what AMO is asking. Deputy Mayor?
Yep, thank you, Mayor. Just to clarify, if we move forward with a vote this evening, a motion, as Mr. Hillman indicated, there is some good in the bill. There's some concerns as well. So, in terms of the amended motion, if we're voting on that, I think that is a good compromise where it allows, it's telling the government to postpone the proclamation, and it allows AMO and other bodies to fine tune if possible, because obviously there are some parts to this bill that make sense in terms of that transparency that was alluded to earlier. So rather than using the strong word of repeal, meaning start over from scratch, let's continue working, perhaps amending and making recommendations in that regard. So I support the amended motion if that's friendly with the mover and seconder.
Well, yeah, there's no, right now, it's just a motion that Councillor Jobin's brought on the floor. If there's an appetite, then we certainly can ask the mover and the seconder if, or wait, I'm gonna get some clarification. Madam Clerk, is there a mover and a seconder? Okay, Councillor Altenhoff. Excuse me.
I'm fine. I looked at Councillor Jobin, but I'm fine with kind of this amendment. Just I guess playing with the words. Let's say for ultimately the best benefit to iron out any kinks or any issues that might exist with something that's really kind of already gone through. So I'm fine with that. My
only advice is that the repeal, I don't think that would happen. I mean, things are there, and I think the understanding that we're getting from him was like let's take a step back. Let's have a conversation on this particular section. And I think there would be more mileage. That's all. That's my nickel's worth. But I'll respect whatever the mover and the seconder are willing to do. So if you're willing to amend the motion, that's one thing. If not, then we can certainly put the vote ahead. So I'll leave it with you, Councillor Jobin, what your wishes are.
Okay, no, certainly then I will agree to that amendment for sure.
And
Okay.
to the seconder, Councillor Allenhoff.
Yeah, absolutely. I already indicated that. I think let's try to use that wording of AMO again to iron out any kinks or issues. So it's betterment of all.
And the only
I
other
agree.
thing,
Okay, thank you.
okay, go ahead. If we can massage the maybe some work with certainly the clerk to make sure that we've got the wording, in proper context, I think would be appropriate. But I think we know the intent, certainly of the motion, and if once the wording is put in play, then if you could certainly just flip an email to members of council just to get their consent to send it off.
Sure. Okay, very good.
Yeah, actually, if Mr. Mayor, if you could allow the clerk maybe to help you with the process here a bit, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, if I may. Given that we have a motion on the floor and a resolution that's on the floor, that's the resolution or the motion that should be considered. If the mover and seconder are willing to amend that portion of the resolution to refine that one section rather than to repeal, to give us the language that you would like to hear. So reconsider or whatever the term is, that should be a friendly amendment to the motion, and that motion should be what's considered by council.
To delay, I think, section 6.
Delay proclamation, I believe, if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with that delay of proclamation wording, if you will. Thank you.
Myself as well.
So then to complete that, Madam Clerk, we need to ask the mayor to call the vote. Are you able to read the amended motion?
If you give me one moment, I should be able to do that for you. That the Council of the Town of Tecumseh support a recommendation that the Province of Ontario repeal, but instead of using the repeal, we're going to delay proclamation, which was the friendly amendment. Schedule 6 of the Budget Measures Act, Bill 229, that the province continue to work with conservation authorities to find workable solutions to reduce red tape and create conditions for growth, that the province respect the current conservation authority and municipal relations, and that the province embrace their long-standing partnership with the conservation authorities and provide them with the tools and financial resources they need to effectively implement their watershed management role, and that a copy of this resolution be sent to the Premier of Ontario, Minister of Finance, Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, local MPs, IRCA, AMO, and the area municipalities.
Yes.
Yep, that's, I think that reads well. And so I'll call the question as amended, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, move to committee minutes. We have the minutes of the Tecumseh Business Improvement Area. If I could have a motion to adopt the November 18th, 2020 minutes of the BIA as duplicated and delivered to members. Councillor Tonio and Councillor Altenhoff. Any errors or omissions, comments? I'm hearing none, all in favor. Opposed, if any, that's carried. Move on to reports. We have the report from two reports from our corporate services and our clerk. First report, 2020-38, Inclusive Communities Fund. I don't know if the clerk wants to bring the report forward. Pretty straightforward. But there we go.
Thank
For
you,
the
Your
viewing
Worship.
audience.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report is in regards to the province announcement of the Inclusive Community Grant, which is intended to strengthen communities and provide opportunities for older adults and people with disabilities, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's in order to create more accessible environments for people of all ages and abilities and backgrounds.
Okay, move.
Sorry, I was looking for the report to move it forward and I couldn't move the report to go on. Under this grant, we're particularly looking for improvements to the rear entrance to the town hall to make it more accessible with sliding doors, as well as the doors at the Golden Age Club, especially for those that are seniors and are most vulnerable at this time. Those improvements would include a new hand railing as well to the rear entrance of the town hall back door. So we're looking for council support as the application does require support from project participants or local service groups. So we have also asked the Golden Age Club, as well as our Accessibility Advisory Committee, our Joint Health and Safety Committee, and our local union representatives to support us in this application, and they have agreed to do so. So we're now looking to council to provide us with their support for this application.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. And so the motion reads that administration be authorized to make application to the Inclusive Community Grant as outlined in report 2020-38 to install barrier-free entrances to the Golden Age Club and the southwest entrance of the Tecumseh Town Hall for a total value of $60,000 plus HST in eligible project costs. And further, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to enter into a funding agreement with the province of Ontario, subject to a successful project award. Moved by Councillor Houston, supported by Councillor Jobin. Any further questions or comments? Having heard none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Next, the closure and sale of portion of Desrow Drive, and that's from obviously our previous meeting. That was we had a PIC with the proponents at that particular time. So what we're looking for is the closure and sale of portion of Desrow Drive be received, and that the authorization be given to providing notice to accordance to the town sale of land by bylaw number 2003-09. And notice bylaw 2003-6 of the intent to close that portion of Desrow Drive described as parts 20, 21, 22 of Plan 12R-19278 in the town of Tecumseh, County of Essex, subject lands to be declared the land subject to the needs of the town, and authorizing the subject lands to be sold to 11 Winds Holding Inc., subject to the town retaining an easement over parts 20 and 21. And further, that following the notices being given, a bylaw be prepared for council's consideration to authorizing the closure of the portion of Desrow Drive, declaring the subject lands to be surplus to the needs of the town, and authorizing subject lands to be sold to 11 Winds Holding Inc. And furthermore, that the costs incurred by the town to close up and convey the subject lands be the responsibility of 11 Winds Holdings Inc. Motion, Councillor Houston moves, Councillor Tonio supports. Any further questions or comments? I heard none, all in favor. Opposed, if any, that's carried. Next, we'll move on to Parks and Recreation Services, Parks and Rec, PRS 2020-27 Tecumseh Multi-Use Sportsplex Update Costing. And I was, Mr. Anthony. There he is. Squares are getting smaller, I think.
Good evening, Mayor McNamara, members of council. So certainly, as a result of the September 8th meeting, council directed administration to secure the services of our architect CS&P with the goal of coming back and providing costing on 3 options. The 3 options certainly were we recalculate the cost of the entire project as it was submitted under the ICIP grant. As time had passed, probably over a year from the original costing. The second was to look at a phased-in approach, and the third was to look at a scaled-down project. So the purpose of tonight's report is to provide council with the information regarding the up-to-date costing for the phased approach, the reduction approach, the reduced project approach, sorry, and a complete project. So to maintain the multi-use sportsplex project proposal in the state of readiness in anticipation of another grant opportunity from the senior levels of government is estimated now at $67 million. So I should clarify too as well, in all the pricing, the partnership with Hotel Dieu Grace Healthcare is still on the table, and their costs are not included in the costs that I am providing you tonight. Their costs for their portion of the project are separate, so I must highlight that. When I go to the next 2 options, I just want to clarify to council that the intent of all of the options is to, at the end of the day, sometime have the complete complex built as per our original design. It may take a little longer, and you'll see some of the costs do not show the cost of the overall soccer dome, because at this point in time, we're not sure the date that's going to happen. And to throw out costing today, and if it's 5 years down the road when that actually may come to actual build, the pricing, as we've seen over the last year, has increased, and we don't know where those costs are going. So that hasn't been costed into the factor. We're showing what we can do at this point in time. The second was undertake a design and cost analysis of a phased approach to the total project, such that the rest of it would be built over time. And if I can possibly, can I have the clerk's department put up the attachment number 1, the project diagram? To just help to go through it. So the second costing will show you the area in the light blue as well as the hashed red portion. So what that is the Hotel Dieu Grace build out, the gymnasium, a redesigned program space, which is a reduction of the overall space from the original plan, change rooms, washrooms for the gymnasium, the second floor walking track, as well as administration space for the recreation department in the building, as the offices would be displaced because of the washroom change. The red hash marks are new program design area, which would include a community space, three program space areas, fitness area, which would be for dance classes, etc. Small kitchen and storage space that would have access to the outside. In that phase, it is not including, again, the soccer dome, but it does include a sports field, a FIFA-sized outdoor soccer field, which you'll see in the dark blue. And then the other light blue area is futuristic, which again would be program space that would be added, and that was part of the original. The white area you'll see between the Twin Pad Arena and the light blue space is the outdoor space that was in the original plan. Okay. That was again $29.2 million. These prices are all inclusive. That's including all the architect costs. That's including the soft costs. And it's also including some inflationary considerations to ensure when the project does move forward, if it is some time length, that there is some inflationary dollars built in. The third option was to undertake a design and cost analysis of a reduced project. And that project is based at $25.3 million and that would just strictly be the blue area. So it would remove the red area, the hash marks for the programming space, but it would still leave in the soccer field on the outside. So the area in between would be green, and the soccer field, the artificial turf soccer field would still be there. Again, all three options include the partnership with Hotel Dieu Grace, which is a very, very big key part of the overall project. And one other thing I would like to point out in the cost of the contract, it's consistent. It's 5.3 million. I believe it's 5.3 million for the cost to do the stormwater management pond, the asphalting, all the outside work, soft services, or hard services that have to be done and prepared, no matter what way we go. Again, we looked at possibility, do we look at maybe downsizing the stormwater management pond because it was really reflective of the roof and the new building, the soccer dome building, the water that would have to be caught somewhere. However, it does not make sense not to do the whole overall outside project because you'd have to dig it back up again and put all the other stormwater management in it. So it makes sense to do the whole portion of it that time. The goal of tonight's report certainly is to provide council with the report, with the updated costings, with potential options that we could look at. But at this point in time, we're not looking to provide a recommendation on funding, the funding proposal, or which option would be the preferred option to move forward with. We're looking at early in January, an overall capital meeting, which would put all of our projects on the table so we could have a look. Council can prioritize and then make a decision as to which way we would like to move with this project. The architect did turn it around in a fairly quick time. The cost consultant did a good job, and certainly I'm open to any questions that council may have on the report or the information that's been provided.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Anthony. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor. Okay, I'll just go down the line.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Paul, for bringing us report. I know it's one of those things in 2020, we've had to learn how to pivot with COVID. And also it seems like with this multi-sportsplex, every time we take a step forward, we take two backwards, whether it be with the grant funding with upper levels of government. Irregardless of that, I know there is a strong consensus or commitment that we want to see this project through. However, we have to be fiscally responsible. And I know the scenarios that you present in this report is doable, I know as a town, and I look forward to that capital meeting that we're going to have in the new year where we can discuss how to go about financing. I myself like the scenario 2, but again, we'll be able to discuss this more, I'm assuming at the next meeting that we have as a council. But it allows us to have a bit of everything in this sportsplex. There's always future opportunities to add and enhance. But I know the town of Tecumseh, the people, the residents here, they've been asking for an upgraded, enhanced multi-sportsplex for years. And again, you'll have the support from the user groups, whether it be minor hockey or minor baseball. They're going to be there. And again, we have a fundraising committee that's set up. And so once we have the direction and the vision of where we're going with this and council makes a decision, it's going to be well received and well needed, much needed for this community. So thank you again for bringing this report forward.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councilor Tonio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Paul, just a couple of questions. I noticed we have the option for lighting over the soccer field. Would the revenue that we would receive for using the lights during the time period that we in darkness, would that help alleviate the cost or offset the cost of the lights by having extra revenue by using the lights? And that doesn't have to be answered today, just a question I have, and you can answer it later. I just want to know if we can figure out, if we do put $150,000 lights in there, are we going to receive enough revenue to offset the cost or not? What percentage would we be at? So that's a question I'd have in the future if we can figure that out about the lights. And the other one was, under scenario 2 and under scenario 3, I see the biggest difference, the only difference is the no programming area versus reduced program area. We currently possess buildings that have facilities for programming already. And I just wonder what the percentage of that they're actually being used, that these new office space, not office space, but program area would be used again, because the other ones are at the capacity. You know what I mean? So question is, are we building some more off program area when we already have program area in other buildings within our municipality? That's the other question I have in the future. So again, you don't have to answer that today. A question I have for the future on those two. So those are my 2 questions I'd like to discuss in the future.
I can quickly respond if you'd like to both
Awesome.
at the moment. So
Yep.
first of all, with the lights, yes, there would be cost recovery, but with the lights, with an outdoor and an artificial turf field, you're playable under most conditions. So as you know, right now, we've had great weather in the fall and the spring. By having lights, we can extend the playing surface because it gets dark earlier, but the weather still is conducive. Soccer, they play in snow in some areas. The lights also, if they were installed there, could be removed at some point in time if and when the actual building comes with the enclosure. You can remove the lights and put them, let's say, at LaSore in one of the soccer fields and have an illuminated field there. So the lights would be certainly something to very much consider. It extends the playing time of those fields, and it does produce additional revenue as a result of that. On your second question, regarding the programming space, the only programming space we have outside the arena is the community center, which are 2 smaller rooms and really aren't conducive to the programs that I'm speaking. The programs space that are going to be provided within the building complement the building. So for example, right now we have the LaSore Academy there. They have classrooms through the day. So they would be able to use that. Fitness programs right now we put up in the arena. It's very difficult for the fitness people because you got ice users on both sides. You got music playing in the arena. You got pucks. You got parents standing outside. So the concentration level and the ability to run a private program isn't there. And as well, different classes that can be there because of your staffing. Your staffing is all in one location. So you have staff who can provide some of the programs, also monitor the facility, where you have to, if you're going off site, again, you have to transport over to it. So the St. Clair Beach Community Center still has a purpose, but the programming space that would be part of this facility would really be designed to complement the building and enhance the amenities we're putting in there to get additional revenues from additional program space. I hope that.
Very much. You answered my questions. I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Paul, for the report. I'm looking forward to having our session in January, and I'll echo the comments that Deputy Mayor has stated. I think at this point, option 1 is just something which is unattainable for us to do on our own. Although I'll put it kind of at the top of the list. Option 2 there in the middle. And for me, it just comes down to the fiscal responsibility and how will we pay for it? What will the end result for our residents look like? And certainly it gives us a really good picture of certainly what is possible, but at the end of the day, what does that impact for the residents? And I know there is certainly an appetite out there, but at the end of the day, how do we pay for it, right? And I think that's the biggest key to this puzzle right now. So looking forward to the discussions in the new year, and thank you for the report, and I think it does a really good job of illustrating where we are today. So
Thank you, Councilor Houston. Councilor Dowie, and then Councilor Altenhoff, Councilor Jobin.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to either Paul or Marg. I guess thank you for the report and for the concepts. Having watched this issue for a long time, and certainly it was a very hot topic in the 2014 election that my first election. The proponents for the project were very much looking forward to the indoor four-season element of being able to play. So with the reduced options, it appears as if that's not part of what would be delivered. That we're really going to build in anticipation of building something else, but the interim facilities would be similar to ones that are already in the inventory. And I'm wondering whether that's just a reality of the architectural design, or if building the indoor facility for the artificial turf could be done absent some of the other things that were added or are already available, say in the school system or in other facilities.
So maybe I can address this first, and then I'll let our CAO follow up. So you're absolutely right. One of the biggest drivers was the artificial turf facility. The unfortunate part at this point in time is the artificial turf facility is the largest and probably the most expensive portion of the bill. Where it's located, and I don't think no matter how Councillor Dowie we try to angle it, it would be like an island by itself right now without a connection to the other part of the building. And it wouldn't have some of the other amenities that would tie into the success of that building. So in a lot of the tours that I've done with these facilities, there's a lot of programming space that's attached. Once again, we have some schools that wanted to be part of the project and run soccer academies as well, but they need classroom space. With the original design of the building, there were no washrooms inside the actual main building. It was all part of the other programming space, the change rooms, etc. And if you look at how the building joins, there's that big gap with just that building there. So it's tough to run some of the amenities. You're always going outside, and it's just the auxiliary portions of the programming just can't be there. The other part with it is when we did talk to some of the soccer groups, I guess artificial turf field is better than no field at all. And yet you're correct. A big driver was having that year-round capability. But if we look at this year as an example, and talking to our Tecumseh soccer program, who was in that new elite league, they start up in April and they run through till October, November. They can play outside in these conditions. And again, I go back to Councillor Tonio's comments about the lights. They would be able to do that on the weekends and such. So it gives them an opportunity. They still could utilize that field for some of their programming. We can still gain the access to the building, and that's how the new part was designed, so that they would be able to come in and use the change rooms. Again, we had to cut down, but they could use the change rooms from the gymnasium through the day. There's some classrooms, and there's an access point to the washrooms on that side of the building that would allow them to have a facility that they could utilize. So that's kind of, you know, I guess the design of the building, you're correct, but it is the portion that isn't attached without the rest of the building being there.
I could, Mr. Mayor, just to add to that, I think what we tried to present here this evening is as council has requested, is sort of having a look at different options that are available to us based on the original concept. And I think that it's good to have this provided to you in advance of the session that's been discussed for early new year, to allow you to, you know, kind of digest the different components and sort out if we need to rethink things further, or how to strategize on this project, because it certainly is a big one. And as we'll also point out, there are other you know, development priorities that we need to address. And so some time to reflect, I think, is wise, because this is an important move for the community, for certain.
Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship, and through you, Your Worship. My appreciation to administration for, I think what's been discussed or mentioned here is kind of a bit of an interim update of kind of what's going on. And the only thing I would ask, an informed decision or an informed situation is the one which can really help us all make the best decision. And I do note, while there's kind of three options that are presented here, option one has what I would refer to as some sub-options. The case where you complete it at once or you kind of complete it in a phased-in approach. Option two has a phased approach, but really doesn't lead you to what is kind of presented as the end product of a complete covered field, which is left somewhat as a bit of an option in option two, where it's indicated in that last paragraph, the redesigned floor plan allowed for future expansion as an indoor FIFA field. So the only thing that I would ask is if certainly the costs can be presented, but can they also be presented in such a fashion that it'll give all of us here, as well as the residents, anyone looking at this, even potential donors, on what are the costs to get everything done at once? And what are the approaches if it's phased in? And, for all these options that are presented, leading to ultimately perhaps that end result, which I think we would all like to see as an indoor covered field. Again, having all this information, while I recognize some of it is presented in here, I think there's some things which are not quantified. And if we could just make sure they are, that would be very helpful. And also in the dimension of achieving the same thing through these different approaches. Where we know a phased-in approach in the long run is going to cost more. And, if we wish to take that route, we can do that. But, ultimately it's going to cost the taxpayers more. So it's a question of do we jump in the deep end at the beginning or do we kind of tread the water? That's all I ask, just for as much quantitative details that can be presented as possible as we move towards a decision. Thank you.
So I can tell council that we're working on right now, probably exactly the document you're looking at, and it's very close to being ready. But tonight wasn't the night that we felt that we should present that with this project because it just is too much detail. So we have a full cost consultants report, which breaks down everything. And you'll be able to see which section, how much the actual artificial turf dome, costs, the other sections that we put this pricing in, but we've rolled the pricing up to provide council with the options tonight that they kind of gave us marching orders to go and come back with. So yes, there is that information. It will be at your fingertips at the meeting in January, and it's quite a detailed document.
Excuse me, thank you again, Your Worship. But I think that's important, and that's the point I think we all want, certainly, and the public, I think it's good for them to see that as well, so they can see the numbers, the donors, the potential individuals willing to contribute to this, they may see something that, they really feel that they can contribute towards. So having all those quantitative details, I think would really be appreciated by everyone. And perhaps I agree with you that maybe right now it's not ready for it, but it's good to hear that when the time comes, you'll have it. Thank you.
Councilor Jobin, I don't know if there's anything you want to add or.
Thank you. My questions have been answered already through other discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The only thing I would add is I think this is a great opportunity for a little bit of a pause and look at going through the holidays. We've got obviously the budget document to look at, and certainly a lot of the capital works and so forth. One of the things that I certainly just want to add to Councillor Altenhoff's dialogue as well is that there's a lot of costs here. In terms of building this thing, I want to make sure that whatever we do build, that we maximize the opportunities and potential for the revenue side. And so I think a lot of it in terms of how those phases are going to be built is you want to be able to be in a position to maximize your revenue side, because if we're looking at expanding those opportunities working with the school boards as an example. There's no way that they're going to go here and then throw everybody on a bus and go down the road someplace else. That's not going to happen. And because that adds to their costs in transportation and so forth. So if we're going to maximize the ability, and I think there's so much potential that in particular with the school boards, it's driving income at times where it's not prime time. It's when most of the facilities, whether it's the arena, nobody really rents a lot of the ice in morning or early afternoons. They do sometimes, here and there, but it's the schools that would be utilizing that, plus the classroom facilities as well. So I think that's something that for me, I want to know in terms of, the potential. I know you can't just drive and say, okay, we're going to get X, but I think you have a pretty good idea. In particular, there's enough maybe information out there in other areas where they have multi recreational facilities that are attached together. But I think those are the potential partners that I think would add to the benefit in terms of, if we're going to phase this thing in, let's phase it into a point where we can maximize the revenue side. I think that's certainly important. And now I'll just lay it out. I'm going to continue to knock on doors at the federal and provincial level. We've got a vaccine. There's 2021 is a whole, it's going to be quite a year. We still have to be prudent, get all that. But I think that everyone knows that these are the type of projects that really can kickstart our economy, and because there's so many components to this, and I think that there's tremendous potential. So we'll continue to knock on doors, and I'm sure there's other opportunities provincially. I think we've got a future candidate here, or a candidate as well. So we're gonna knock on every door that we can, and drive as much potential capabilities. And because to Deputy Mayor's point, it was very clear, and I still get it too, is the general interest in the general public. And so once we get them to see the total package, the opportunities, the risks, the benefits, for our community, I think it'll go a long way. Because I really think that this, as much as it's a big ticket item, which it is, it's probably going to be one of the biggest ones, for years to come. But the reality is that what type of community we want to build. And that drives economic development opportunities. People are going to want to move here. And they do now. We want even more. And so it'll drive more development. So I think we'll take a step back, we'll digest this report that you prepared, Mr. Anthony. And I certainly appreciate you doing this in a short period of time. And then I think we're going to have a very fruitful and discussion in the latter part of January. So with that, I need a motion to receive Mr. Anthony's report. Deputy Mayor Bichetti, Councilor Tonio, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. And so now we'll move on to a report that's also from, it's from the Pathway to Potential Funding Agreement for 2020, and that's also from Parks and Recreation. It's to authorize to execute a service agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Tecumseh and the Corporation of the City of Windsor relating to the Pathway Potential Program for 2020 budget year at no cost to the town. I like those. Moved by Councillor Altonoff and supported by Councillor Houston. Anything you want to highlight, Mr. Anthony, in that report?
No, it's other than through the mayor to council, this has certainly been a great program that we partner with the county and the city of Windsor. We've been able to help so many families and individuals who maybe couldn't participate, in sports in the past. Unfortunately, this past year, because of the pandemic, a lot of programs had to be canceled and a lot of the funding could not be utilized. But the city and the county are still there with us partnering, and we're looking to hope to rebound this year and begin to help those underprivileged children again, and people who need the assistance to be able to participate and certainly better their lives.
All right, thank you for that. So then on the question, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that carries. Okay, we'll move on to the planning and building services. We have a 2020-37 CIP grants reassignment agreement. That's the Gateway Tower, 11870 Tecumseh Road. And I think it's pretty straightforward, but I don't know if Mr. Hillman's still here, but I think it's just a transfer. I think if you want to highlight that report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief. It is a report that is recommending assignment of the 2 grants that were provided to Gateway Towers, a significant apartment proposal just on the east end of Tecumseh Road. Those were for development charges and for future benefit of the deferral of, the return of 5 years of the municipal portion of the increased tax assessment. So CMHC is providing considerable funding for this project, and as part of that, they are required to seek from the town assignment of those grants that have been approved by council but not paid until the project is complete, in case there is a default. And so there's an agreement attached to the report. The CIP contemplated this type of assignment by way of agreement, and we're recommending that council authorize execution of the associated agreement as prepared by the town's solicitor.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hillman. Okay, the pleasure. Moved by Councilor Houston, and do I have support? Councilor Jobin on the motion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion carries. Next, Public Works, Environmental Services. It's the Capital Works Plan.
Mr. Mayor, if we could perhaps also circle back after to the 2 Capital Works reports in Parks and Recreation as well.
I missed that?
Well, we can group them all together. They're all, Capital Works related. Certainly, there's one there for buildings and another for the parks. And then, of course, the one that you're at right now is the Public Works one. So probably a good idea to bundle them all together.
Okay, I don't know how I missed that. Okay, we will take the advice from our CAO. We are going to bundle them. Moved by Deputy Mayor McKetty, supported Councilor Tonio. Questions or comments? Go ahead, Councilor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. Look forward to seeing shovels in the ground. Very excited that this is coming forward early this year, and I'm just looking forward to seeing all these projects, especially the Manning Road work. I know that's something that very much been looking forward to, and a lot of the residents of the neighborhood are as well.
Yeah, there's nothing like the smell of asphalt in the morning. All right, so on the question, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. For some reason, I have 2 pages that are identical here. I don't know why. You're gonna have to help me out here. I got 2 pages here, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Your Worship. We're on the Public Works and Environmental Services Report 2020-36, with regards to the water and wastewater rates for 2021. We're looking for, in this report, we're looking for council's adoption of the 2020-85 bylaw that's on the agenda this evening, to adopt the water and wastewater rates for 2021 based on the recommendations of the 2015 Town of Tecumseh Water and Wastewater Rate Study and the mediation agreement and discussions with the Windsor Utilities Commission. The author of this report was the Director of Public Works and Environmental Services, who may have something to add to this report, to this.
All right, thank you. All right, pleasure of council. I need that. Moved by Councilor Houston, and I have support, Councilor Dowie. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. All right, I think we're ready for bylaws. Oh, sorry, Councilor Jobin.
Certainly. Thank you through Mr. Mayor. My apologies, everyone. Earlier this evening when we began the meeting, I had some freezing, so I was trying to switch over to my hotspot so I could connect to the Wi-Fi service. So I would like to declare at this time a conflict for bylaw 2020-81 as my husband will be on that committee. So I won't be voting in on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Okay, and as I may respectfully suggest to Councillor Jobin, a bylaw 2020-82 also relates to that appointment.
That's correct. Thank you.
So if I may, maybe I'll just parse out the bylaws as we normally deal with these as one grouping, but given the declarations this evening, I'll try and parse those out in recognition of those declarations. So firstly, we have bylaw number 2020-83, which amends the appointments to the Youth Advisory Committee for the remaining term of council. In recognition of Councillor Altenhoff's earlier declaration, we'd be looking for first and second and third and final readings, if appropriate, Your Worship, to this bylaw.
All right. Motion moved by Deputy Mayor Bichetti, Councilor Tonio supports. 2 readings. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried.
Next, Your Worship, I would bring forward bylaws 2020-81 and 2020-82. Again, we'd respectfully asking for first, second, third, and final readings to this bylaw. And I've parsed this out in recognition of Councillor Jobin and Dowie's earlier declaration.
All right, moved by Councilor Tonio, 2 readings. Councilor Houston supports. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Third reading then is proper. Councilor Houston and Councilor Tonio. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. And I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, I think on number 4, bylaw 2020-83, I only asked for 2 readings.
So when I presented the bylaw, Your Worship, I asked for first, second, third, and final, if appropriate, for the motion.
I missed that particular piece there on that particular. So I would call again on 2023, and I know that Councillor Altenhoff has declared a conflict on that. So Deputy Mayor Bichetti moves 3 readings, supported by Councillor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to bylaw number 84. This is the bylaw to appoint the new members to the BIA Board of Management for the remaining term of council. Again, if appropriate, Your Worship, we'd be asking for first, second, third, and final readings to this bylaw.
Okay, I'll go with 3 readings. Councillor Houston, Councillor Jobin. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. All right.
Okay, and the last bylaws that we have on the agenda is bylaw 2020-80 regarding the approval of the P2P funding agreement, and bylaw number 2020-85 to adopt the water and wastewater rates for the year 2021. So if appropriate, we could have first, second, third, and final readings to these two bylaws.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Three readings, Councilor Tonio, Councilor Houston. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried.
And sorry, we also have bylaws number 86 being the authorization of an execution of acknowledgement of an assignment of agreement grant with Gateway Towers, and bylaw number 87 to authorize the execution of amending agreement with First Canada. So again, we'd be asking for first, second, third, and final readings of these bylaws.
Thank you, Councilor Tonio and Councilor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. All right, unfinished business. None. And new business. Well, the only new business I'm going to bring in, I think this is our last meeting, I think, publicly. So I want to take this opportunity to certainly, first of all, thank council for, although we've had some difficult times in 2020, I think if we look back and certainly the accomplishments and of the town Tecumseh over the 12 months, it has been successful. There's no question. And so I want to thank each and every one of you for your passion and certainly your contributions to our community and to administration. Again, can't say enough, that the guidance you give us in terms of moving the agenda forward under some crazy times. We certainly want to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you, and in particular, Mark, through your leadership and through your senior management team. Really, it's an all-star team. We're really very, very blessed to have such a dedicated group of people that guide us in the right way. And so, on behalf of myself, I want to wish everyone a great Christmas, a terrific New Year. I know it's going to be a little bit different, and for the viewing audience out there as well, is that we're still in the midst of this pandemic, and it's not business as usual for us. It's going to be tough for some families more than others to get through certainly the holiday season. For all of us, let's keep those that are in some really tough times in dealing with this pandemic. Let's keep them in our certainly in our thoughts and certainly our prayers as we move forward. But for all of us, just have a great Christmas. Get some rest. Enjoy your family time, your close bubble family time. For those who have kids at home, give them an extra hug, because this is a tough time for kids and so forth. So with that, I just want to again just extend my best wishes to each and every one of you over the holidays. All right, then. Madam Clerk, I think we require a confirmatory bylaw on the proceedings this evening. And so 3 readings on to confirm the proceedings of our meeting. Councillor Altenhoff and Deputy Mayor Buchetti. All in favor? Oppose if any, that's carried. There are no motions, notices of motions required tonight. So our next meeting is Tuesday, January the 12th, 2021, and 7 p.m. regular council meeting. So if no further business, adjournment is in order. Councilor Tonio and Councilor Dowie. All in favor? Oppose if any, that is carried. And so to council, administration, bid you good night. Thank you for the proceedings this evening, and those who are viewing from home, thank you for tuning in.